And now we're going to cut to Tyler Robinson and Alh4zr. Did I say that? Did I say that right?
OSINT.
Alh4zr3d. Thank you for the correction there. So Tyler and Al are here with us to talk about some most common tools for triage and analysis, which is awesome. Tyler and Al, welcome.
Thanks, man. This is going to be very exciting. I'm super stoked to co-host with my famous guest. So.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the tips and tricks.
Thanks for the invite, Paul Squared.
Thanks for being on.
We're both weird. Or are you Paul and I'm Maxwell? I think that's.
I'm Paul A now.
Assume my identity.
Alpha.
Awesome. Well, take it away, Tyler and Al.
Excellent. Let's. You want to go first? You want me to go first? I don't know who's doing screen share here. I guess we can kind of run an introduction first. Honestly, like. Kind of give a rundown of a couple ways that Polarity in particular that we've used for offensive part of our offensive engagements. But really we want to run through some of the OSINT things you can do as you're doing offensive engagements, as you're running pen tests, doing internals, maybe you're even on the defensive side. Like how can you get ahead of some of the curve if you're trying to defend against things, you're trying to do threat hunting, analysis on your network. There's some really great resources out there and utilities that you can use to speed up your process. Speed is obviously one of the most important things as you're doing some of this. So kind of your time to remediation, time to detection, and the ability for you to quickly pivot and make educated moves for more prioritized assets. So that's both offensive and defensive. So I think Al and I are going to run through some of the ways in which we do some OSINT behavior and tools that we use, as well as run through some of the cool things you can do with Polarity to do that maybe even a little more efficiently.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think it's probably if you have a screen share prepared, I think it's probably easier if you do it. I'm coming through Zoom here, but yeah, it's when it comes to cyber, like to cyber remediation and stuff, like we use these words like remediation and detection and response and all these things that kind of dissociate it from what it really is, which is it's a battle. Like there is warfare happening in a very real sense. It might be a digital battle that's fought without missiles or bullets or anything like that, but it is a battle. And when you're talking about battle strategy, military strategy, you have a concept called the OODA loop, which you may have heard, and basically it involves how fast can you go from detection to can you go through the loop of detection, remediation, response, that sort of thing, and anything that speeds up that process is going to help you move faster than if you can move faster than the attackers, if you can adapt to the situation faster than they can. That's what leads to victory in battles like this. So it's important to reframe cyber warfare is just that, warfare. Nobody's dying, hopefully, but it is a battle in every other sense of the word. So that's what we're going to do today. That's what we're talking about today. And yeah, you're not even going to need any kind of any kind of VM or any kind of environment set up. These are all things you can do with open source tools. So a lot of them are going to involve open source intelligence and reconnaissance, OSINT strategies, and that's what that's primarily what we've got for you today. I think we're gonna have a good time with it. I think the link for the tournament is in chat. If you'd like to take part, you're more than free to pop on in there, and you're also free to hop into the Discord and say hi to any of the presenters as well.
All right, we're back. Sorry, small technical difficulties with screen sharing.
It's understandable.
All right, so I think I can pop up my screen here real quick. Yeah. All right, I figured we could run through just a couple quick examples as you're doing OSINT. Some of the things from an offensive engagement standpoint. If you're just getting into the engagement, you're really trying to gain some understanding around an organization, not just their external IP space or what their domains are. Both of those things are important and part of the engagement, but really you're trying to understand an organization's technology stack, their culture, what people work for who, what kind of social media presence they have, the individuals, and if their behaviors are leveraging corporate network or assets or email addresses to do different things on social media or on forums. Do they post in Stack Overflow? Do they have a presence in GitHub? All these things are much more important than just looking at IP space and looking for vulnerabilities or exploits. And any good red team, the number of times you're going to utilize something like an exploit is fairly low, fairly rare. You're typically leveraging people's jobs against them. So that means, phishing, social engineering, using phone calls, looking at technology stacks and entry points for things like password spraying or SaaS application, single sign-on, different web entity keys, AWS keys, S3 bucket keys, all the OSINT stuff that you're going to do during an engagement. And doing those manually, which you often have to do, becomes very laborious and tedious, especially if you're on a very limited time schedule. So as much efficiency as you can get trying to gain OSINT or gain intelligence around an organization, kind of the better you can do. And so one of the tools that I've used for quite a while, and it's just gotten better and better with, especially with the community edition and a lot of the integrations, is Polarity. And essentially, since we haven't even covered what Polarity is, it really is kind of a single pane of glass for keeping notes. If you're using the enterprise version, you've got the concept of channels and teams and notes around any piece of information. If I see an IP address on the screen, the overlay that Polarity does, it provides a GUI overlay or an on-demand overlay that I can do quick OSINT or recon on something like an IP address, a domain name, any piece of information. So I'll kind of show you some of the workflow and a couple of the cool things that we can do from an OSINT standpoint with Polarity. So with inside of Polarity, once you kind of get the installation, I believe there's a free trial out there. You can ask for a trial or an early invite to the community version, but they've got a bunch of integrations that allow you to do things like look at different intelligence points with inside of whatever you're viewing in your. This is not going over with inside of your screen. So you got a bunch of integrations. You got things like Alien Vault. You've got Cisco Umbrella. Some of these require API keys. Some of these require an account. But many of the stuff with inside the community does not. Things like CyberChef, where I've got like a base 64 string. I want to quickly decode it. I can single click on this and on-demand scanner and have it tell me everything I need to know without having to go to a new web page or new resource. So it keeps my flow interacting on the screen and with whatever process I'm currently working in without having to leave that screen. And so we'll kind of take a quick look at what that flow can look like. In this particular, on this machine here, I'm just using the community version. And again, the community version has a ton of integration now that you can turn on and off. Things like Exploit Finder, CVE, got gray noise integrated. There's a ton of integrations here that you can turn on and turn off. And with the community version, the on-demand is the only view you have. With the enterprise version, it will live overlay on your screen, and you can have it highlight things as you go if it has information on different assets or IPs or domain names or hashes, anything that you're looking at or you flagged to be identified. All those things can be looked at. For the community version, it's live. You've got a hotkey. I'll show you a quick. We'll just do a quick look here on Showdown. Let's check out some BACnet. BACnet's always interesting. So if we're looking at something like BACnet, what the hell? The ability for Showdown to kind of run through and look at different assets on the internet is a great example, because we can actually have IP addresses, we can have strings in there, we can have header, we can have base 64. And Showdown is one of the common places that, as an attacker, you commonly go to look for different vulnerabilities that are available. And I had to log in, so give me 2 seconds here. If you had anything, like any other use cases, Al, on ways that you used it as well, feel free to just pipe in and take over here.
Well, the nice thing about Polarity is that it's customizable. You can write your own. It's built in Node.js essentially, and it's you can build your own modules for this thing. And there are quite a few like effective modules that exist already for Polarity. For example, like CyberChef and things of that nature. I use CyberChef all the time, both for my real job as a red teamer and for like CTFs. Like that kind of thing is that service is very, very powerful, and Polarity just brings it right to your literally right to your desktop there, and you can search for things on the fly really, really quickly and things of that nature. Very, very, very powerful. There's also things that will search for file hashes, they'll automatically hash files for you and search for it in the VirusTotal database. There's VirusTotal integration. All of this stuff helps, basically just helps your workflow move faster. You don't have to, you can move faster. It's more convenient. All of these things are basically Polarity is only limited by what you think you can, what you are aware of that it can do. I suppose it can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the custom integrations, and they have a great GitHub project that has integrations I haven't even touched. They've added a ton very recently, but you've got the ability. So anything that you highlight. So this is with the community version. Obviously, you can have on demand and heads up display in the enterprise version. But this one, you can highlight any piece of information. I see this in one of my logs. I can highlight it, and if I just hit the hotkey, which by default is hold Control C. That brings up information here. So I've got different pivots that I can do based on the OSINT pivot integration. I can very quickly do a quick dig on this IP. What's this IP? It's, here's your ARAN. Here's a couple of the authoritative records. I can look at the headers very quickly and identify what it's running. So within like 10 seconds, I've just fingerprinted this IP address. I've got different pieces for OSINT, using the OSINT thing. I can actually look it up in gray noise, see what information that has by a single click. So I'm not really taking my workflow and messing up my workflow. I've got all this information over here on the right. As I look through it, I can do even things like just direct Google searches. It'll handle the Google search for me. And so as you start to use this more, you really are only limited by your imagination and the kind of things that you're doing. Another great resource is the exploit finder, especially when you're on a red team or you're trying to do some very quick reconnaissance and you're trying to figure out if a version is vulnerable. You can do things like CVEs, and I actually just typed in 2020. Let's do 22. There's a couple interesting ones there. Just by typing in the actual CVE, or I just posted it by this year, we can see that there's different cert posts. I can quickly look at what some critical vulnerabilities. If I can't remember whatever my CVE number was, I can actually look at known exploits and see if I see it in there. Obviously, there's probably a bunch of Log4j stuff in here, but we can take any of this stuff and very quickly pivot. And right here, I've got a ton of proof of concepts for remote code execution on a specific CVE. I didn't even have to go look at Google. I didn't have to search anything. I've got the actual GitHub for the proof of concept that I can start to pivot on and quickly develop my own code, look at what the vulnerability was, and see if it's something I need to do. As well as, you've got YouTube. I can actually see how to exploit this, look through a couple of YouTube videos. And again, this is all within side of just this Polarity by typing in a simple CVE or hash type or search query. So all the information right there at your fingertips without having to kind of pivot as you're going through and doing your engagement. And this goes along with things like one of the really good recon uses that I've done this for is leveraging have I been pwned to see if a company's email address is in there, if I can get an email address format. I can do very quick Google searches for different users and email addresses with the company's tag on it, and that way I'm able to build kind of my phishing list, start to look through some of my pretexts, come up with some ideas on what tech stacks they're using, and I can do all of that just from right here. So we can do. Let's see who's a good target today.
You could just do Polarity itself.
Yeah, maybe Polarity is going to get a free pen test today, or at least some recon. So another cool integration is things like the tweets as well. So if you're looking for information, you're trying to figure out a CVE, you're doing some recon on a handle. This is especially good for like threat intelligence or threat investigators. I've leveraged this to hunt for people, different handles, different strings or hashtags. I can actually very quickly look at, hey, Polarity. There's a few people in the news with Polarity in there. And I believe it is Polarity IO for the Twitter piece. We can just show that. We can see, recent tweets, different video blogs that they've done. I'm sure this stream is actually on here. Here's one of our triages we did. So we can run through very quickly and gain some quick intelligence if you're looking at logs or you're looking at, say, a Splunk dashboard and you need to identify what an IP address is doing or has done. You can very quickly do things like that. Another from the defensive side, you can very quickly look at hashes and identify known threat actors or TTPs. The integration to things like ServiceNow, where you're able to have labels onto those assets, and those assets then provide information to your heads-up display. So you got an IP address and a log. You don't know whose that is. You can quickly highlight that, kick it over to Polarity, and if you get the integration, it will tell you, hey, this is the CEO's laptop. This is a high priority. Now you know to further investigate those particular logs, all from a Splunk dashboard, without having to bring up and do a whole bunch of other logging in and investigation outside of your workflow. From an offensive standpoint, again, I'll typically put in IP ranges, high priority assets. I'll put domain controllers, domain admin, usernames within inside of my lists. And that way, anytime I'm like looking through documents, I'm looking through wikis, I'm looking through Confluence or company SaaS applications, I have it flag if I see one of those high priority assets or things that I want to come back and highlight. I can make a note and annotate that for different parts of my operation or different things to go investigate later.
Yeah, it's really a very powerful tool, and it can do, and it again, these are just the current annotations. You can do there's not annotations, the current integrations, excuse me. And there's just so much more that it can actually there's so much more that it can do. There's all I'm exploring using Polarity possibly as a teaching tool on my own live stream, because it might help to be able to put like if I'm running like to say an nmap command, I could have an entry in Polarity with annotations of like, here's what this switch means, here's what this switch means, the most common command I run is this is why, so that students, without me having to constantly explain it on stream, which I do all the time, but if I don't explain something, or I miss the user's or the student has a question or something like that, the viewer has a question, they can look in Polarity and see, oh, what was that command? Oh, it's right here, and here's what all those switches that he put in mean, and here's what here's what this command is doing, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it could be a valuable tool on my own stream, in addition to like my work when I'm doing OSINT, when I'm doing and it's obviously it's obviously good on the stream for memes. How could I possibly have forgotten the memes that are possible with Polarity? We have to think of the meme potential. So there's so much potential to Polarity as a piece of software. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, the possibility of doing things like run books, where you're having keywords, like you said, the command syntax one is very good. We built a couple out that had some of the common tool syntaxes as well as OPSEC considerations. So anytime you type that command in, it gets highlighted, and over in your Polarity window, you'll see, hey, before you run that, make sure that you're double checking this OPSEC. Here's the ways you can get caught. And different operators have made notes around, if this is Carbon Black running in this environment and you're about to run this encoded PowerShell, you're going to get picked up. So here's what you have to do to get around that and make sure that you're running this in OPSEC safe mode. And so there's a ton of potential there. And again, you are really limited by your integrations and how clever you start to think about utilizing this. The ability to make channels and have operators make notes on different assets as they're doing the engagement makes a collaborative endeavor from the offensive side super, super easy. And the Recon's amazing, but you start to leverage additional pieces of information just out of the Recon pieces. It becomes a very quick tool that you almost feel like you can't live without anymore.
It does take a little getting used to, but yeah, once you've adopted, and it's always hard making workflow changes. Like when you do things a certain way for a while, it gets hard to integrate a new tool into that workflow. Even something like Polarity. Polarity does take a little getting used to, but if you play around with it, I think you'll find that it does quickly become indispensable. So there is the community edition in chat if you want to take a look at it, explore it, play around with it, see what Polarity can do for you there. And it looks like we are doing some more. You're seeing the effectiveness of Polarity for OSINT right now. He's put Polarity.com and Polarity.io, or he's put Polarity.io in there, and he's using all the different integrations to basically search for information on Polarity.io very quickly. And on a pen test especially, this is very effective. I have a lot of pen test clients who they want what my company calls like an OSINT. An OSINT assessment, which basically means it's an external penetration test, but they're not going to give me IP addresses to attack or anything like that. It's my job to do all of this OSINT, to find their company's footprint, find subdomains, find IP addresses, find this stuff. And then I have to still have time to go and attack. And when you only have like a week to do this, you quickly find that spending days and days doing OSINT is not going to work. You need a tool to speed all this up, and it really does help. Polarity is one of those tools that really does help with this process. I also see a LinkedIn integration now, which I didn't see before. LinkedIn is super useful, obviously, for reconning users. Typically, what I will do as a red teamer when I need to identify usernames, various valid emails to send phishing emails to, things like that, I'll go to hunter.io and get their email address format, and then I'll scrape their employees off of LinkedIn and use that to extrapolate usernames and IPs, or email addresses, excuse me. And that's really great for like password spraying, as well as sending phishing emails. So definitely, there's a lot of power here. There's definitely a lot of power here. There's also the Twitter integration is very useful as well. If the organization has an active Twitter account, it helps to go in there and see what they're tweeting, what they're saying, who's active on Twitter, who do they engage with. This is a game of information you're playing, and the more information you have, the more likely you are to win the game, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's it whatever improves your efficiency regarding OSINT is valuable in my book. There are some OPSEC considerations, but generally with open source intelligence, the whole point is drawing information about an organization from entities that are not that organization. So typically, I haven't had a problem with OPSEC with Polarity.
Nope. And as you can see, like, just quick pivots. We just did a search for a company. We seen the company do some tweets. We were able to find on LinkedIn several people that were there. Highlighted the CEO that we found from LinkedIn. Ran that through the search in the next piece. Now Paul Batista. Paul B on the show here is now getting reconned. We're looking at different social media, different potential handles that we can follow. See what he actually ate for Hacker Summer Camp in here somewhere. Yeah, there's some dinner and food preferences. So again, very, very quick pivots that allow us to do interesting things, all without having to leave just a single integration. We can see different media events he's been to, maybe come up with different strategies for pretext for phishing, for targeting. Again, very, very quick utilization just from the OSINT standpoint. And again, there's a ton of integration here for things like finding exploits, exploit DB, CVE Finder. It looks for GitHub integrations. If you're doing some of the analysis for, say, different hashes and things, as you're looking through logs, this has the ability to correlate those against VirusTotal. Very quickly, it will highlight and identify different hash types. And again, if you have CyberChef, it's an unknown hash type, and you're trying to figure out what it is. You can run through very quick recipes and dissect different maybe disparate pieces of information and correlate those. Again, in the enterprise version, you've got the ability to annotate, make notes on, I could highlight this, hit my hotkey for the enterprise version, make a quick note. Hey, this is the CEO. He was at, this conference just recently, maybe send a follow-up letter with some ideas on phishing. So very quick way to make a note without having to have a whole platform that does notes that you pass off to different operators to then collaboratively share and build pretexts. All of that can be done right inside of the channel, inside of Polarity.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the collaboration aspect. Typically, you're not operating in a vacuum as a pen tester, certainly not as a red teamer. I've never been on a red team in which I was the only one doing a red team assessment. That's why it's called a team. It's not much of a team if it's just a single person. So you got to have some kind of collaboration software that helps you quickly exchange notes and trade information back and forth to make the whole process more efficient. And another problem that you quickly run into when you're doing OSINT on an organization. It's like a lot of times I don't like to just send. I personally don't like to send just blanket phishing emails to a lot of people. I find it's loud. It tends to get alerted on. They're less convincing. What I like to do is I like to recon specific users. I like to try to select certain users that will tend to have rights that I access that I want them to have. Like, for example, human resources, for instance, or secretaries. And then I will recon those specific people, starting on LinkedIn, and then I'll go to Facebook, and I'll go to Instagram, and I'll go to all these other different platforms, and drawing lines between these people on entirely different platforms is not always easy. It's not always easy trying to figure out if the Dan Smith or whatever that you're trying to recon from LinkedIn is the same Dan Smith that's on Facebook, because sometimes they're they've usually got like a professional headshot on LinkedIn, and then on Facebook the image is like maybe they're one of those dudes that takes pictures of the selfies of themselves in the car, and they're bald and have the sunglasses. One of those like that's like 20% of the people on Facebook right there. I just described. So like it's sometimes hard to figure out who is who. And Polarity really helps with that in correlating different accounts from different platforms and getting a complete picture of a person so that you can so that you can then plan to, do malicious things in a legal way. I'm being paid to do these malicious things, so it's obviously I'm only advocating for doing these things for legal purposes. But Polarity really does help with this whole workflow of this situation.
Yeah, and I've got the enterprise up. I was just going to show a very quick demo of the collaboration piece, because I do believe it does highlight some of the really cool things around teams and the way that you operate within a team, especially during an offensive engagement. It becomes very difficult to do some of the things that you're trying to do for operations, especially if you're doing like threat intelligence or looking at threat actors and gathering very specific TTPs. So you got a bunch of hashes, you've got a ton of file types you're looking at and doing analysis on things. Your ability to we'll take something like this. So very, very similar thing here. You've got your on demand, you've got a stream and a highlight, and those just do a few different things as far as like your heads up display. But the on demand is very similar. The integrations are also very similar. But your ability to do something like make a note on, make a note on something like this email address. I can very quickly double click on that. It brings up my, brought it up to my other screen. Hold on. Brings up a window over here that, if I can get this to drop down, we'll be in better shape. There we go. So it allows you to do things like annotate and make very quick notes around individual pieces of information. Like I've got a hash here, right? So this is a no malicious hash. Damn it.
Yeah, I put that in there. I was playing with Polarity a little bit.
Sweet. So you can see, I can see that someone made an annotation here on in the general channel, and you can set up channels for different engagements, different pieces of information that you're trying to search. And those pieces of information show up here, and I can very quickly make a comment and make my own notes around that. But once you put something in here, a piece of information, now anytime that Polarity sees that as you're doing recon or you're looking at log files, it'll actually highlight this piece of information. And as you're maybe looking at a different log or a different target, all of a sudden you've got information. Hey, this hash was seen on another target. This was part of a threat actor. We can do some very quick intelligence around known things, known actors and TTPs, and then make our own note. Hey, we found this on another host. Put a ticket in directly from Polarity, and that collaboration to do things like that makes it very efficient for tags and quickly talking through with your team things to look at.
Yeah, that's great. So so using Polarity isn't like immediately intuitive. Like there's a lot of there's some keyboard shortcuts you need to learn and stuff like that. How would perhaps just let's do can we do like a small tutorial of okay, so let's say we'll take that malicious file hash for instance. How would one use the VirusTotal integration to search for it? How would one use that for use an integration for that and so on?
Yeah, so basically, once you've got all your integrations set up, and there's a little bit of setup, the Polarity team, if you're doing the enterprise version, will help you with that. If you're using the community version, all the integrations are already installed on the server, and you just have to turn them on or off, configure the API. But once you get to that point, then you're doing something where for on demand, that's any piece of information or a series of information, a page of information, you highlight it and you hold Control-C down. Once you hold Control-C down, what that does is that takes that information out of the clipboard, or Polarity has a GUI aware or kind of whatever's being displayed on your screen. It is in real time and in memory, taking and scraping that and identifying pieces of information that it has information on through your integrations. And so we just took this one for on demand. I highlighted that, Control-C, long hold, that brings it over into Polarity. And this is where you begin to do your reconnaissance. Now, I don't have a ton of integrations hooked up into this server. So generally, there's a malicious hash type. I see that someone made a comment. I can do, if I had the VirusTotal plugin enabled on this server, then we would see right here, we'd see VT, we'd see Google, we'd see different threat actors and different information around this hash if it knows something about it. So let's see if I can actually kick that on real quick. I've not messed. Oh, it is on. All right, so the hash is over here. It's looking for things. It does not find anything, and I think that is because of this particular server, the way we've got this configured. This was actually a new server we stood up for the demo, and we just didn't get it all the way finished. But if I hop back over to the community version, and I've got that hash saved. Come on, there we go. I'll hop over to the community version. We can actually see information from other entities that it knows about, or what it knows about this particular hash. So let's kill this one and hop over to the community version. And so for the community version, once there's a trial or a request for early access, once you kind of get access to that you'll get sent a username and password in an email as part of your sign up and onboarding that Polarity does. Someone just asked that in Discord. All right, so we can actually now look at that hash. Okay, so here's the hash. We put it in. We can do Google search about this hash. We see 4 blog posts about this. We know that there's 2 binaries that were identified within hybrid analysis. This hash was ran through it, and we can see that it's part of a WannaCry zip, so malicious activity. We can do things like if we didn't know what this hash was, maybe it's an NTLM v1 or v2 hash. We could actually run through different CyberChef recipes to actually figure out what that is. Maybe it's base 64, or maybe it's a URL safe encoded string. CyberChef will help us go through that. But we can quickly look through this and see that this hash has been identified, and there's a ton of Google searches relating to this hash for WannaCry. So very quickly, we only had a hash. Now we know that as part of one of the WannaCry, we see several support options. We can go look at some security blogs. And even from something like OSINT Pivot, we can actually do maybe an Alien Vault lookup and see what their indicators say. So there's 5 pulses on this related to ransomware system drive. We can see the tags for it. It's definitely a known malicious hash. And we can very quickly, from an analysis standpoint, dive into what this hash is tied to and how to deal with it. So
hey Tyler,
it's very,
sorry, I hate to interrupt because it's awesome stuff, but we're a couple of minutes over time. So.
Oh, I appreciate that because I was not watching any clocks.
No worries. No, it's all good stuff.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone's time on this, and if you guys have any questions, just dump them up in the Discord. We'll kind of follow up a little bit with some additional offensive pieces as the offensive triage happens. We're excited to see some people use this.
Fantastic. Tyler, Al, thank you both so much for the amazing content.
Appreciate it. Absolutely. Thanks for the training session. Hopefully that's useful to some folks coming into the tournament here.